Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Penny and this is Penny's Small Spaces. Well, winter has arrived here in Canada with a vengeance. Here's a little picture of what it looks like outside my door today. I think the temperature got down to minus 26 Celsius, which I think is about minus 15 Fahrenheit. So it's cold. And while I'm very proud to be a Canadian and I love living in this country, I am not a big fan of the cold. So I would just as soon be on an airplane, heading someplace warm for the winter and come back when the snow is gone. However, that is not my life. So here we are. So before we get started with today's video, I want to just take a moment and send some love down to a fellow miniature content creator. Her name is Laura and her channel name is Tinyview. Now, Laura works primarily in 1/16 scale, but don't let that stop you from checking her out if that's not your scale, because she just does some incredibly cool stuff. She started by making a general store, which is super cute, and now she's expanding to make a whole Western town. Now, we all know that making miniatures is not a cheap hobby. I can't think of any hobby that is cheap, but I know that miniatures can be very expensive. By the time you finish paying for your tools that you use and the materials that you need, it can be pretty pricey. So one of the great things about Laura is that she works almost exclusively with paper. So she uses corrugated cardboard, cardboard from cereal boxes, cardstock, and even just plain old copy paper. And the things that she can make with one of those little quilling tools is unbelievable. So do yourself a favor and check her out. I'll leave a link to her channel below. Okay, today's tutorial. I'm actually going to be making two things today. I'm going to first make a stand for the TV trays that I did in a previous video. That one's been a long time coming, sorry. And then I'm also going to make a console table that sits behind a couch. Now, both of these projects are very simple, so if you're new to the miniature game and you want to try it, you shouldn't have too much trouble with it. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm starting with the stand for the TV trays. So I have my pieces out here. I have 2 pieces marked A, 3 for piece B, 2 for piece C, 2 for piece D, and while I have 2 of piece E, I ended up only needing 1. So before we get started gluing anything together, I need to make some measurements on a few of these pieces so that everything is level and straight. So I'm going to start with pieces marked A, and these are the vertical legs for the stand. I like to start by marking the direction of each of those pieces. So in this case, I'm putting a tiny little arrow to indicate that this is the bottom of that leg. I'll start by making the following measurements, starting from the bottom of the leg and working my way over to the right. So you'll need to make a pencil mark at 6 millimeters, then at 30 millimeters, then at 32.5 millimeters, and then your final mark at 70 millimeters. Repeat that on the second piece marked A. For piece marked B, you'll only need to make this measurement on 1 of the 3 pieces. On the short side, or the end, mark down 1.5 millimeters. Do that on either side, and then draw a line across to join the 2 marks. In that small space, I've also marked the center point of the length of that piece, so at about 12.5 millimeters. For your pieces marked C, you're going to, just on one end of that piece, you'll make a mark down 3 millimeters from the top and in 3 millimeters from the side. you can draw a line across between those two marks. Make these markings on both pieces marked C. There's no markings required on pieces D or E. I have just a tiny bit of prep work to do on a couple of these pieces. So starting with piece B, this is the one where you made the measurement at 1.5 millimeters. So starting at that center point, I'm just drawing an arch from the center down to the mark that we made at the 1.5 millimeters. That's just going to round off the top of that piece just a little bit. Now I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm going to trim off that little bit of excess at the top. I'm going to go in with a little bit of sandpaper next, just to make sure that it's nice and rounded. And now we have a piece that's just slightly rounded on the top. For the two pieces that I've marked C, all I'm going to do now is just snip off those little corners on each of those pieces. I've done that to both pieces, and again we can go in with some sandpaper now and just smooth those out. We're ready to start assembling. So I'm going to take my pieces marked A, and I'm going to make sure that when I glue them that I've put it up on its end. So I've got one piece marked A, and then I have the one piece marked B that I've curved off the top, and that's going to be at the top of this ladder, so to speak. So it's up to you whether or not you want to go right up to the top like I'm doing. If you prefer to put it down a little bit lower, that's okay as well. My aim here though is to put it pretty much center of that piece marked A. So I'm going to put just a little bit of glue on the end of that piece B and then glue it in place. This was glued in at that 6 millimeter mark. Now my second piece marked B will go in between those two measurements at 30 and 32.5 millimeters. So again, I'm just adding a little bit of glue to the end. And then I'll lay that one in place. Now notice the direction of this second piece. It's going the opposite direction of the first piece that we laid in up top. I'll get my big hands out of the way in just a second. So you can see how this piece is going all the way across piece A. Now that third B piece is going to go in at the 70 millimeter mark, and I'm going to attach it the exact same direction as the second piece that I put in. Once the glue has had a chance to dry, then we're just going to take our second piece marked A and attach it to the other side. Next I'm going to attach our horizontal legs, and these are your pieces marked C. These should fit under that third piece B at the 70 millimeter mark. Make sure that that little corner that you've clipped is facing towards the rest of the piece. So I'm just adding a little bit of glue on those places where the two pieces of wood will make contact. Then I'm using my 1, 2, 3 blocks to make sure that those two pieces stay at a 90-degree angle. I'm repeating that same process for the other leg. So I'm ready now to add our pieces marked D, which are our tray holders. So I've gone in and I've marked out about 2.5 millimeters from each side, because those tray holders need to be positioned so that they fit in this space. The other reason for the 2.5 millimeters is that it's the same width as the wood that I'm using. And that's going to be important in the next step. So adding just a little bit of glue, I'll place that piece on the inside of that 2.5 millimeter line. Repeat that same process to attach the other side. You need to make sure that they're straight and that they're level. I'm adding in pieces E now, and if I had been a little smarter, I would have done this before I added the tray holders, but better late than never. So these little pieces are more for structure. After I had put the tray holders in, I was worried that they might twist over time. So this will just help keep them in place. The last step is to add a stopper at the end of the tray holder. This will stop the TV trays from possibly sliding off if you have to move the piece around. These are cut from the 1/32 of an inch or 1 millimeter plywood, so they're very thin. I'm adding just a tiny bit of glue to the end of the tray holders and then laying those pieces in place. You'll see that they're slightly higher than the tray holders themselves, so that creates just a little bit of a lip at the end. And the final test, of course, is to add the TV trays onto the stand. I opted not to paint the TV trays because I'm fearful that it'll interfere with the function of the trays. So I'm also going to leave the stand in its natural wood as well. But I think it looks okay just the way it is. Okay, so project number 2 for this video is a console table that will sit behind the couch. Now I made this couch in a previous video and I'll put a link to that video down in the description in case you want to have a look at that. But the first thing I need to do is measure the back of the couch so that I get the height and the length right. So the table will be 167 millimeters wide and about 73 millimeters high. So I've cut and sanded all of the pieces that I'll need for the console table. So I have 3 pieces that will make up the legs. I have 2 pieces, these are marked B, and these will be the braces in between the legs. And then I have 2 pieces for the top. To give it a little bit more of a finished look, when I sanded, I took off those sharp edges on all of the corners. So I'll put all but pieces marked A aside for now, and I have to make just one measurement on all 3 of these pieces. And that measurement comes in at 10 millimeters from one end. For 2 of the 3 pieces, you'll just need that measurement on one side of the board, but on the third piece, you'll need to make that measurement on both sides. So you can see here that I have it measured on the front and then on the back of that piece. This is going to be the middle one, and so you'll have a piece of support coming out from each side. On your piece marked D, which is the smaller of the 2 pieces that will make up your tabletop, you'll need to make the following measurements. Starting from the left, you'll want to make a mark at the 2 millimeter mark, then the 77.5 millimeter mark, the 80 millimeter mark, And then finally at 159 millimeters. Make those measurements on the top and bottom of this piece and then draw some lines across. For piece number C, which is the larger of the tabletop, we don't need to make any measurements, but I do want to show you that I did sand quite a bit of a bevel on each of the 4 sides of this piece. So there's quite a bit of an angle that comes down, just again to give it a more finished look. I'm going to start by building the legs with the braces in them first, and then we'll add the tabletop on at the end. So if you take one of your pieces marked A, so this would be one that has the line drawn on just the 1/2, put that line towards the inside, and then just add a little bit of glue on the end of one of your brace pieces, so this would be piece number C, and we're just going to attach them at a 90-degree angle. And using that line, I'm just putting that brace piece just above that pencil line. I'm going to use my 1, 2, 3 block just to make sure that that angle stays square. Once the glue has had a chance to set, I'm moving my block over and I'll attach my second piece marked A. So this is the one where I've put that 10 millimeter mark on both sides. So you can add a little bit of glue onto the end of that piece B. Then add your second leg. And again, the brace should sit just above that pencil line. Now we can add our second brace, which is your second piece marked B. I'm taking the time to remove any excess glue that might have seeped out in between these joints, because I do want to stain this piece, and stain will not stain over top of a glue residue. Now we can add our third and final leg, so this would be your third piece marked A. So I've given those legs some time for the glue to really dry, and now I'm going to add the first of the 2 pieces that make up the top. So your 2 outside legs are going to sit inside of that first millimeter mark. The center leg is going to sit in between the 2 marks that you made at the center. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply some glue here on the ends of all 3 of those legs, and then we'll line it up with the tabletop and hold it together. I've again given that glue some time to dry, and now I'm going to add the top piece of the tabletop on top. So I'll put my glue on, I'm going to spread that out pretty well, and then we'll add the top. Now remember that I beveled down the edges of this top piece, and I'm going to make sure that the larger area is towards the top of the table, and so I'm gluing on the smaller area. Now I should have about 2 millimeters on each end, and then about 1 millimeter on the front and back. Now I've used a fair bit of glue here, and I don't want the top layer of that tabletop to warp or to lift. So I'm going to add some clamps, and I'll leave them until it's completely dry. I'm just adding a little piece of shop towel here, just so that my clamps don't mark up the top of the table. If you're looking for these clamps, they're a Dollar Tree purchase, and I think they came in a package of 8. All that's left now is to stain it. So I did go in with some sandpaper and give it another sand, especially in around where the wood joins together, just to make sure that I didn't have any glue residue left behind. And here's our finished product. I think it turned out pretty well. I think it is a little bit thin. I think it kind of depends on whether or not your couch will sit right up against the wall or whether or not it's going to kind of sit out in the open. I would think though, if you're going to put your couch kind of out in the open or in an open area, that you may want to make that table a little bit thicker. Anyway, just some final thoughts. Thanks very much for joining me. I'm always grateful that you check in and watch the videos. So until next time, I hope you've enjoyed these 2 tutorials, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.